Hello, all of my crafty friends. I just wanted to take a little bit of time with you today and come and share a couple of cards with you from the Simon Says Stamp January 2020 card kit. So let's jump right into it. Our first card that we're going to be doing today, I'm taking a piece of Hero Arts cardstock. It's a gold shimmery cardstock that came in one of the kits in addition to a honeybee stamp snowflower stencil, and I'm going to back that with some pixie spray. And I'm going to take a little bit of my purple tape and I'm going to just tape that down. And I'm using some Cosmic Shimmer with my Nuvo, what is it that I want to call it? This media spatula. Gonna clean that off really good and let that dry. So here that is. It is awesome. It is so shimmery. And I took the snowflake die that is in the set and cut that out twice from some cardstock. And I'm taking some blue cardstock from my stash and a Lawn Fawn stitch circle die, and I am going to be cutting out a circle through both sides of the panel to create a nice spinning card. So here we have those pieces, and it comes with some extra pieces left that you can use for a different card. So here I am just aligning everything, and I'm using some thread that came in a Simon Says Stamp I think it was the Christmas box that it came in, and I am going to use that thread and I'm going to wedge it in between two of the snowflakes so that I can create that spinning element for my card. I'm going to go in and I'm going to create the inside portion of my card, again using some of that gold Hero Arts cardstock from my stash and then just some white cardstock. I'm going to close the front of the card base and I am going to use some double-sided tape to tack down the thread. Once I've done that, I'm going to take some double-sided tape, and this is how I'm going to adhere that front panel to the actual card base to wedge the thread in between the two panels. So I'm just standing that up so I can get that on as straight as I possibly can. And then once I get done with that, you see how that is when it opens. And so I spin it and then it twirls when it's opened by the recipient. I'm going to snip off those end pieces, and I think that looks gorgeous. I'm going to take one of the sentiments out of the card kit that says there's no one like you. And I'm going to take my Misty here and I'm going to try to straighten it out a little bit to make it just a straight line sentiment. A lot of these sentiments had a curve because they will fit into the banner that goes along with the kit. I'm going to then take some white cardstock, and I am going to stamp that out with using some of my Versamark Dazzle ink, which is a sticky embossing ink with a shimmer in case you wanted to do kind of a tone on tone type of look. I just use that for everything, and I'm going to take some of the Brutus Monroe Gilded embossing powder. I just got this and it is so gorgeous. I'm loving all of those embossing powders. I didn't show it, but make sure that you're using your anti-static powder tool to keep all of those extra flecks of embossing powder away. And then I have my heat gun heating up on the side, and I'm going to heat that. And then I am going to use a sentiment banner. This is just a banner from my stash, and I am going to cut that out. Now I cut this kind of wonky and I have to go back and fix it because it's driving me crazy, but for the purposes of the video you guys will get to see it wonky because it's not perfect, right? It is handmade, so you can see that. And it says no one like you, which I think goes perfect with that gold cardstock. So there's card number one. For card number 2, I'm going to bring in some alcohol lift ink, some alcohol ink cardstock by Ranger. I'm going to bring in the Stream alcohol ink that came in the kit. I am going to also use some alcohol blending solution and some 91% isopropyl alcohol. You know, I didn't know how to say that word until I started doing alcohol ink, and I had to figure out how to say that. 91% isopropyl alcohol. I like saying it now. So at any rate, I'm going to make a panel. This is my first time playing with the alcohol lift inks. I will say that hindsight, I probably would not have done this next step, which was bringing in the alcohol pearl inks. But I wanted to try it, and I like the shimmer of the alcohol pearls. I just don't know whether it helps with the lifting techniques. So I'm going to have to play around with that a little bit. It did okay for the purpose of the card, but I think I would, if I wanted a very clean lift, I probably would not use the pearls if I did this again. So now I'm adding some of the Tranquil alcohol pearl inks to finish off this panel, and just kind of letting it move as it wants, adding it different levels of color so that we can have different transitions. It's amazing how many different color variations you can get using just 1 or 2 colors. So while that is drying, we're going to sit that aside and let it go ahead and dry, and then clean off our area, and we will then be moving on to the next step, which is going to be cutting out several snowflakes using the snowflake die again. Please excuse me, I'm getting over being sick, which is why this video is up later than I anticipated. So I'm going to cut out 2 from white cardstock and 1 from that silver glitter cardstock that came in the card kit, and I am going to layer those together. I'm not layering them one on top of another the way that they should go. I'm offsetting them some so that it shows the dimension of that. And this is going to be a pretty simple card, but it came out beautifully, and I love it. I love that silver sparkle. That is a beautiful, beautiful cardstock. So I'm just adding glue to the very centers of each of these snowflakes because I want the edges to be free and able to be manipulated in order to show that dimension there. So I'm using my art glitter glue from MayMayMadeIt.com, and I am adhering all of those elements there. I'm going to take some of the cardstock that came in the kit, and this is what I'm going to use as a panel for my card. So I try not to waste much cardstock, so I'm also going to take the end pieces that were left, and I'm going to utilize those to create just a little something extra on the inside of my card. It kind of helps to dress up the inside panel. I always do an inside panel for my cards. So I'm going to add that so that I can utilize as much of that cardstock as I can. I'm going to add that into the inside of the card base, and then we will head back to the front of the card to finish up card number 2. So we are going to now take that alcohol ink panel that has dried, and we're going to take several of those snowflakes that came in the card kit. I think this is such a fun card kit, and I've been so into snowflakes and loving snowflakes so much. This one was a welcomed addition to my craft room. So I'm taking the time to kind of arrange these snowflakes. I'm not using them as the layered snowflakes as they were intended. I'm just using one layer of each to kind of create a background, a subtle background, which is what you're going to get with the alcohol lift ink. I like to call it kind of a ghosting effect. It's really, really cool, and I really like how this turned out. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to use my alcohol lift ink to saturate the stamps really well. And I do do this step multiple times. However, if you're going to do it multiple times, make sure that you are cleaning off your stamps in between, because you do not want to get ink on your alcohol lift pad. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm dabbing away the ink, and once I've dabbed up the majority of the ink, I start to rub each of the areas where the snowflakes are, and you start to see the snowflakes come up from the alcohol ink, which I think is just like magic. I love the way that this panel came out. So once I have that completed, kind of doing my placement here, and to be completely honest, I really have to start using my rulers, because again, after looking at my cards at the end, I noticed that my snowflake is to one side, which drives me crazy. I'm pretty sure other people won't really even pay it any attention. However, I notice it, and sometimes we're our own worst critic, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. So I'm going to use that banner here for this second card and my mini Misty. And I'm just using a scrap of white cardstock, the same scrap that I used to cut out some of those snowflakes. And I'm going to bring in my Gina K amalgam ink, and I'm going to stamp warm wishes for this panel. I'm going to fussy cut and use my Memento marker to outline my edges, just to kind of give it a finished look on this card. And then that is going to be our sentiment for this one. I'm going to take a thin piece of foam tape, because I've decided that I would like for that to be popped up just a little bit to give it some dimension. And I'm going to place that right under the bottom of our snowflake. Now, in the center of each of the snowflakes that we created with the ghosting effect, I used some pearls from my stash, and that is my little finishing touch for card number 2. So now we're going to move on to card number 3. Now, card number 3, I am going to make this a 5x7 card. However, this first panel I have created to be 7 inches tall by 7¼ inches tall by 5 inches wide, because I wanted it to be top folding. So I'm going to need a little hinge piece in order to connect my front and back pieces. I have gone and cut out 6 snowflakes using some gold and white glitter cardstock from Cricut. And I am now going to bring in my trimmer, and I have connected my 2 pieces. I have a piece of gold marble cardstock from my stash. It's die cuts with a view paper pack from, I think, 2015. And I am going to essentially be cutting out the center of these 2 card panels. So now that I've cut out the centerpiece of these 2 card panels, I am going to start piecing together my card. Now you see I have folded that hinge piece, and I'm going to use my bone folder to kind of varnish it down, and then I'm going to connect it to the larger piece of the cardstock for the front panel. So we're going to glue that down, and I will tell you, this card, it took a bit for it to come from out of my head and into fruition. I had a couple of hiccups just with me doing things out of order. I guess that's the best way to describe it. But all in all, it came together. I used my Xyron sticker maker to add adhesive to the back of those snowflakes so that I could connect 2 of them so it looked seamless front to back, because we're going to be using acetate in between that 1 inch gap. I think it's a 2 inch gap. It's a 2 inch gap. Now I'm going to use some score tape, and I am lining up my bottom piece of my cardstock, and I am also going to be putting score tape at the top, and I'm going to take some acetate, and I'm going to place that at the top of my card base, and make sure that I have that lined up pretty well, because that score tape is very, very sticky. And I noticed that I have cut my acetate a little bit too long. And so once I've done that, I am going to now line up my bottom piece with the back of the card, and that's the easiest way for me to get it lined up with the acetate. I'm now looking at my placement for where I want my snowflakes to show inside of my window. And once I get that placement how I would like for it to look, my next thing will be to place another piece of acetate with my gold marble cardstock at the top and the bottom in order to go over the top of the card base. So this essentially has acetate, kind of an acetate sandwich, that sandwiches the snowflakes in between, and the marble cardstock shows on the front, and then once you open the card, you'll see the white at the bottom or on the back. So I'm just taking the score tape and tacking down the pieces of the white marble. And now I have not tacked down the acetate at the top to the acetate at the bottom, because I needed to put the snowflakes in between to get those sandwiched on. I have taken a piece of score tape in order to tack down my snowflakes, in addition to tacking down the center portion of my card. So this will tack down the acetate at the back to the acetate at the front. And then once I do that, the last thing that I will have to do is place a piece of score tape at the bottom to connect the acetate at the bottom of the card, the two pieces of acetate. I hope that I'm doing a good job of explaining this to you guys. And again, I'm sorry, kind of getting over being ill, and I just didn't want to wait any longer to put this video out. So I have gotten all of the front panel pieces put together. Everything is all glued together. I shouldn't say glued, because I used score tape. So all taped together, I guess is the best way to put it. Now I'm working again on my inside panel. Like I said, I'm using that gold marble cardstock and some white cardstock from my stash. And I am going to utilize that to create a border piece for the inside of my card. So now you can see that the card, I wanted to make sure it was sturdy enough to stand up. And I'm going to take some gold vellum, and I am going to stamp out a sentiment from my stash, and I'm going to use some alabaster white embossing powder from Brutus Monroe, and this says "There's no one like you." I really love that, and I feel like it goes great with the snowflake cards. And this actually was from the Simon Says Stamp January card kit from last year. And then I have some Recollection brads that are also shaped in the form of a snowflake, which I thought would be really cute to adhere the sentiment to the card. So I'm just putting this in between the first piece of acetate and the second piece of acetate. I'm using my Cricut pokey tool to do that, and that is how I'm going to adhere that sentiment. So now we're on to card number 4, and I have utilized my Cricut in order to create a card base. I wanted to create a little bit of a window that had some accent to it, and I'm going to take 3 of my snowflakes, and this time I'm going to use them in the layering manner, and I am going to do some heat embossing directly on the front of my card. So I'm using my Versamark Dazzle embossing ink pad again, and I am putting this down on the card base, trying to make sure that I have it all evenly covered. And the first time I am going to use sterling embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. And I have my heat tool off to the side already heating up so that my card base does not warp too much. I don't typically stamp or work on my actual card base, but because of the decision to create this card base with a little bit of a window, I decided to minimize the bulk of the card. So we're going to go ahead and heat emboss the card, and we are going to then work on the second layer of the snowflakes. So we've got the second layer. They were pretty easy to line up, and this time I am going to use the gilded gold embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. Again, a very beautiful color. I am really loving the Brutus Monroe embossing powders. They seem to emboss very well. So I love how that came out. Now the next thing that I am going to do, once I've got all of those embossed and heated, melted really well, I am going to work on creating the inside panel of my card. So I'm going to take some of that cardstock that came in, some of the paper pack that came in the kit, and I decided to utilize the falling snowflakes. I really thought that that would look really cute on the inside of the card and peeking out of that window. And I just cut a piece of cardstock to fit right where the window piece would be showing, so that it would show from the outside of the card as well. And so I have glued that down inside the card, and I am going to take a piece of acetate and run it top and bottom of the inside of the card base, just to kind of give a little bit more stability and to make it a little more sturdy. I love for my cards to have some thickness to them, and I also feel like it gives it a little bit of an elegant feel. Like this card, I was really trying to do something that was more elegant, which was kind of the color palette that I used. It was the reason that I used the gold and the silver. I'm getting a thank you sentiment out of my stash. Again, I have no clue where this came from, but it's a beautiful scripty thank you sentiment, and I used some of the silver glitter cardstock from Simon Says stamp that came in the kit to cut it out. And I'm going to place that right across the window, and we have a beautiful thank you card for someone as our card number 4 for today. So here's a quick look at all of the cards that we made today. I went and added some jewels to the thank you card. I really enjoyed how versatile this kit was, and I was initially kind of worried about what I would be able to do, but I thought it came out great. So thank you guys for stopping by and spending some time with me, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.